last stand, and I came to deliver. Been called a Clinton operative, a Russian, and a grifter. By libs, a Washington student debt, proud to be an intern, sucking up to pigs who get a tax cut in the midterms. You cut the ties but never heal the wrist burns. Capitalist shackles wrap and penetrate like ringworms around the necks of those whose deaths will not affect the king's purse or the coffers of the company the king serves, who manufacture mandated tinctures. Their safety data hanging from a fixture, half a mile skyward, just dangling from the rafters. My grift is sobbing till I'm cackling with laughter. I guess I would have made a decent actor. I'd be great at crying on command until they cut plus 40 minutes after. When the director waves a hand, it ain't a rap, it's now a legal matter. Honey, my grift is weeping on a mic until I'm hacking up airstrike verses like it's bombs away and batter up. Swinging on these bigots, they keep killing us to fatten up. Kill the switch, eat the rich, I think they're finally fat enough. Grab your knife and fork, the world is yours, just say you've had enough. And if you're comfy, you could go ahead and laugh it up. Tell me how the most important vote I'll ever cast is like the choosing of a bus, in that it might not take you anywhere you want, but no one can deny the fact the bus is now no longer where it was. And that's the kind of progress we should celebrate and trust. Spoken like a kid who never took a bus. Spoken like a piece of shit that used some cash to mask his stink and truly thinks he's one of us. Spoken like a terminally unserious person who equates our cries for rights to mixed up orders from a server. It paints a privileged picture of what you would label urgent if the worst thing you've experienced in life has been the time your waiter accidentally brought a tray of gold flake scallop when you clearly ordered gold flake urchin. And now you're storming out the restaurant and hopping in a Tesla. You got 80 pounds of Tony Fauci merchant.
Rewind to chains won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. Rewind to a chance won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride.
Best to place your bets on weaponizing the identity of every limp progressive claiming grassroots integrity. Policy is a slippery slope for all of its complexity, so flex your brave resistance with this Ilhan Omar NFT. Numbered one of 723. Each depicts her valiantly championing a bill before she lays it at a donor's feet. And she can throw her hands up in the air with AOC and say if only Nina Turner could have voted present too, that's why we need another seat. We need some more progressives we elect to only tweet, who live to serve Humana and their label of elective slapped on every patient's gravest needs. And every station plays the theme that medical professionals agree on the effectiveness and safety of injections authorized for this emergency. And in purely unrelated news, the profits of the ones who manufacture vaccines just increased by nearly 36 billion with a fucking B. Sometimes it feels like we're the only ones that see. Sometimes it feels like all of us are lost at sea. And every time we think we see an island on the tip of the horizon, it turns out to be another measure making sure we're kept within the watchful eye of murderous authority. And so I guess my grift is crying for the future they denied us, where the people who would buy us are a mockable minority. And we are more than genomes under warranty. And we are more than serfs in constant quarantine. If I had a single breath left, I'd let the chorus scream. I'd announce our leaders claiming none for all and more for me. None for all and more for me. None for all and more for me. None for all and more for me.
Rewind to a chance won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. Rewind to a chance won't make you wait in such a long line. Life's not just a way to waste your free time. Air that's fit to breathe is not a free ride. Free ride. SWAT team took your neighbor today. Watched them as they walked him away. You told yourself extremists come in all different shapes. Met his eyes and lowered your gaze. Is it too late for us to ever change? When we are collecting the dust of better days, they're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to be safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Sheriff stopped your daughter today. Pepper sprayed her twice in the face. He must have had good reason if he'd treat her that way. At least that's what they've taught you to say. But is it too late for us to ever change? Once we're collecting the dust of better days, and they're always watching us, but we're never safe. We're not meant to feel safe, not meant to escape. We aren't meant to wake. Feds arrived and had you detained. Said you'd made some posts they want changed. Tased you till you felt like you'd forgotten your name, or life before they had you contained. Oh, life before they had you contained. SWAT team took your neighbor today.
Who are these people?
Who are these people. Hi, everyone. It's Tuesday night again. You know what? Today is the 5th Tuesday night of the month. We have a special 5th episode of Indie News Now live on in March. So that's something different. I'm Indy, for all who don't know and can't see on my face there over what my name is. This is we're on live at IndieMediaToday.com over on Substack. We're live over on Indie News Network everywhere else. That it would be on 7 different places. That would be over on YouTube and Rumble and Kick and Twitch and Twitter, or they call it X. Odyssey, we're over on Odyssey.com and BitChute.com. But we also self-host at a site called IndieNewsNow.com. It's also the name of the show, because a lot of the content that you're going to see tonight comes from that website. It is a free aggregator that we created that has a ton of different independents that you can pull content from. Tonight we are going to read part 2 of Whitney Webb's article about Technate, Ohio, and Leslie Wexner, the town that Leslie Wexner, Jeffrey Epstein, and Associates et al. Have created that now controls a lot of the industry and has courted a lot of the industry into this New Albany area outside of Columbus, where they've expanded this city. Funny enough, Whitney Webb went on with Jimmy Dore the day after I read the article, so that kind of worked out nicely. And then Mark Goodwin, who wrote the article with Whitney, also went on Jimmy on Friday with guest host Misty. So that was pretty cool to see. And then we're also going to talk about all the different stuff that's going on in Israel. You know, the law that amazingly got passed yesterday. And then Miss Rachel and all she's trying to do to shut down Dilley. We're going to talk about the Sanctioned, and we're going to this Hüseyin Dogru and what they're doing to him, the guy who founded Red Stream initially, and now they want to persecute him even further. Now they're going after his wife's bank account even. It's crazy. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about, just for a minute, we're going to laugh at the spyware that the White House came out with. And I know that it was covered on ProPilled and on other shows. So I'm just going to bring a quick video about that. And then I'm going to talk about the return of one of my favorite people in this space that had been disappeared and gone for a long time, who I guess is coming back. We'll see exactly what they do, and I'll tease what that is later on. And then also a couple other lightning round stories. And then, the execution of these journalists and medics in Lebanon. I've got a thing where the head of the Mossad is admitting to booby trapping areas where you would expect, which basically is everywhere. Very frightening stuff there. But also this mass execution thing that they just passed, specifically for Palestinian prisoners, where they've got over 9,000, including a lot of children already held without trial in a lot of cases, and, indefinitely. And their solution is one that is unacceptable to me and to many others, but there doesn't seem to be anyone with the actual authority to stop them from doing it and will to do it. It's really frustrating. So we'll talk about all those things tonight. We are going to get started tonight by reading the Whitney Webb piece, but before we do that, support independent media because we need it more than ever. Everybody on that board already has, and I really appreciate everyone who has. I look at that graphic every day. Every time I open my browser, it's my background. I have such deep appreciation for the people that support this network and for the time that we put in, that are able to support us for the time that we put in to curating stories, to building things like IndieNewsNow.com, to putting out video clips every day at Indie Media Today and on the YouTube channel. We premiered actually part 1 of the Whitney Webb article at 8 o'clock. That's a new feature that Rumble just created from their studio. So you can upload a video and premiere it. So that's pretty cool. But anywhere you can that you can support, Cash App, $, Indie News Network, co-fi.com/Indie News Network. I forgot to thank Jonathan H. the other night, by the way. He hooked us up with a little Cash App. PayPal.me/Indie News Network or Patreon.com/Indie News Network. Like I said, at IndieNewsNow.com, there's a section to keep the news free. You can leave a Stripe tip for the network. And then over at Substack, you can do INNnewsletter.com, where we are a member and streaming now to all the INN channels. And IndieMediaToday.com. Again, that's my Substack. I publish articles there. Sometimes when I do an appearance, Indie's Tech Tips Live goes live over there, and this show goes live over there with all the clips going out daily at 8:30 a.m. I also share the network update for INN to Indie Media Today every Sunday, usually. Saturday, Sunday, something like that. I try to get to it on the weekend. Okay. Everybody ready to have me read this Whitney thing? So last Tuesday night, I read the first half of this article titled Technate Ohio. So for those who had not been here last week, okay, just going to read this little intro teaser of what we're talking about, and then I'm going to jump to halfway down the article, because this says that it's a 49-minute read, but last week I spent over 80 minutes reading this article, and I only got halfway. So it may take us a little while, but I do want to get through, because I read through the rest of it, and there's a lot more information I think that we need to get to, and they're laying out what their plan, Whitney and Mark lay out what they perceive to be the plan and how this all plays out in their minds in 2026, 2028, and beyond. So again, the title of the article is Technate Ohio, How Leslie Wexner and Jeffrey Epstein Built the Silicon Heartland. All right, teasing that Ohio has become the new destination for big tech data centers and AI infrastructure. The state owes much of its rapid transformation into the so-called Silicon Heartland to the now vast array of public-private partnerships. Again, that's a very important term, public-private partnerships, pioneered by the state's richest man, Leslie Wexner, and his former money manager and fixer, Jeffrey Epstein. Again, this is at unlimitedhangout.com. I am a paid subscriber to that site, have been for years. I'm a big supporter of Whitney Webb, a fan. Mark Goodwin as well, who she co-wrote this article with. So jumping down to halfway, we start at where she talks about how these data centers started to pop up, the power behind the power. So the boom in AI data centers across the United States has also spurred a renaissance in nuclear power as data centers continue to drive the country's surging power demands. That's not a secret to anyone. Ohio is, of course, no exception. However, unique to Ohio is the fact that the state's largest corruption scandal ever is intimately linked to the state's nuclear power industry and those seeking to further expand the Silicon Heartland. How convenient. In July of 2020, 5 Ohioans were charged with racketeering in what has been described as likely the largest bribery money laundering scheme ever perpetrated against the people of the state of Ohio. This scandal led to the arrest of the then Ohio House Speaker, Larry Householder, the Ohio Republican Party Chair, Matt Borges, the Household's advisor, Jeffrey Longstreth, and 2 Ohio-based lobbyists, Neil Clark and Juan Cespedes. The lobbyists are what we're going to talk about. The 5 men were found to be complicit in distributing bribes to members of the House in order to pass a controversial law that led to the bailout of 2 aging nuclear power plants and 2 coal power plants paid for by utility ratepayers, which is i.e. regular Ohioans paying utility bills. The 2 Ohioan nuclear power plants, Perry and Davis Bess, all right, received a $150 million a year subsidy. Hold on a sec. $150 million a year subsidy due to the passing of this law known as HB 6. Okay. 2 nuclear power plants central to this scheme were owned by Energy Harbor, which was previously known as First Energy. A lot of us know that company because it's our power company. The very company found guilty of bribing Ohio officials in order to ensure their hefty bailout. So they now have changed the name, right? Because the name First Energy is toxic and affiliated with the bailout and bribing and the corruption. Central to this bailout, let me zoom in a little bit more. Oh, God. All right. Rameh. Okay, we passed this already. Here we go. Central to the bailout was the successful campaign by Larry Householder to take his position as Speaker of the House. He had secretly controlled a 501c4 nonprofit called Generation Now, into which First Energy had funneled around $60 million between 2017 and March 2020. That's a lot of money. According to U.S. Attorney David de Villiers, who charged the five men, there was no mistake. This is Larry Householder's 501c4. Reporting from NPR in July of 2020 stated that de Villiers had alleged that the money from the scheme was spent to the detriment of other political candidates and the people of Ohio. Of course, that's what 501c4s do. They trash other candidates. The prosecutors claimed that members of Householder's enterprise use those payments for their own personal benefit and to gain support for Householder's bid to become Speaker. Yeah, they likely used it. Again, I don't want to speculate how. According to the complaint filed in July 2020, during the quote-unquote spring and fall of 2018, the enterprise, Generation Now, spent millions in Company A, First Energy money, to support House candidates involved in primary and general elections, whom the enterprise believed would both vote for Householder as Speaker and ultimately would follow his lead as Speaker and vote for bailout legislation benefiting First Energy. Of course they would. The company had notably announced it was closing nuclear power plants and declaring bankruptcy shortly before in March 2018. So in exchange for these payments, Householder and his co-conspirators helped pass HB 6. All right, so they were going to get nothing. And they said the state's going to get nothing if we declare bankruptcy. So give us a bailout and at least maybe you'll get something. They also subsequently defeated a ballot initiative to strike down the law after its successful passing. That's unreal. They defeated a ballot initiative, right? The complaint confirms that Householder-backed candidates that had received money from First Energy via Householder's Generation Now organization helped elect him, who introduced the bill just 3 months into his term. Go figure. As a result of the legislation, First Energy's $60 million racketeering scheme went on to be worth $1.3 billion. So they kind of blew it up a little bit. The aforementioned Jobs Ohio, which they talked about earlier, had lent First Energy $12 million in 2015, but oddly chose to forgive the loan 2 years later. Unpaid. Why did they forgive the loan? Weird. All right. As noted above, First Energy sent regular payments to Householder's secret company, Generation Now, beginning in 2017. So now this is like a direct corruption bribery scandal. And people went to jail for this already. He's just reminding us all the stuff that happened with First Energy because it's going to become relevant to the Wexner stuff in building New Albany. These payments began just a few months after Householder had accompanied First Energy employees on their company jet. Nothing to see here. The payments from First Energy to Householder increased after HB 6 was introduced, including an $8 million wire to Generation Now in May of 2019. So the House Speaker has a private organization that a private company is funneling money into. He's buying ads and influence with other representatives on behalf of that company and then putting out legislation to help that company. But Generation Now, he never disclosed was his. This money was apparently used to help manufacture consent for the bailout via mailers and advertising, in addition to their own personal enrichment and benefit. Wow. The bill was passed by a 51-38 vote and promptly signed by Ohio Governor Mike DeWine. When a campaign was organized to overturn the law via ballot initiative, again, First Energy wired Generation Now an additional $38 million between July and October 2019. Yep, Denver Attaway. Politics, April 25th, 2024. Utility that bribed Ohio regulators secretly bankrolled Republican Mike DeWine's 2018 governor bid. Yep. Because they knew that he would deliver. Over the course of this 3-year period, First Energy again sent $60 million to essentially purchase the billion-dollar bailout. State prosecutors described the payments as akin to bags of cash. Unlike campaign or PAC contributions, they weren't regulated, they weren't reported, they weren't subject to public scrutiny. And the enterprise, meaning First Energy, freely spent the bribe payments to further the enterprise's political interests and to enrich themselves. I mean, again, how people aren't in jail for this, I don't know, but maybe they are. While certainly a notable story unto itself, with numerous implications for the state's booming data center industry, there are multiple connections between the parties involved to the decades-old effort by Epstein and Wexner to build out New Albany, Ohio. Again, I knew she was going to tie it back to New Albany. And this is the guy, the lobbyist, Neil Clark, a longtime lobbyist in Ohio, and one of those 5 charged with racketeering in 2020 was an essential figure within the scheme. This is the middleman. He's the connector. During conversations with Householder, which were recorded by the FBI, Clark self-described himself as Householder's proxy and also claimed that the dark money at their disposal was unlimited. Clark was also recorded saying that we call Company A, First Energy, the bank. They can fund these things for 20 years if they want to. They've got too much money and too much power. So we skip to 1999, skip back to 99. All right, this guy, Neil Clark, had formed State Street Consultants, an Ohio-based powerhouse lobbying firm with former Ohio Democratic Party chairman Paul Tipps. The firm grew into the largest government affairs consulting firm in Ohio, but not before both Tipps and Clark had spent years lobbying on behalf of Wexner's Limited Brands and the Epstein-Wexner-run New Albany Company, again, that we talked about and covered in last week during the first half of this article. During this period, Wexner was working with the lobbying firm, the Success Group, which she'll get to later, in addition to Tipps and Clark, to, quote, persuade the Ohio legislature in 1990 to put an amendment into an unrelated bill that in essence allowed his company to create its own government within the development. The change enabled the private government to tax new residents, issue new bonds, and essentially control almost all the area. That's really important. So now New Albany is able to issue its own taxes on top of the city taxes and the county. In 1992, Wexner sought an amendment to a state law preventing his golf course, the New Albany Country Club, from reapplying for a liquor license during a 4-year wait after previously being denied said license. Well, let's see what we can do about that. Clark, alongside his future partner Tipps, represented Wexner's attempt to circumnavigate this long wait, with Clark noting that he provided the services pro bono. As a charter member of Wexner's club, Clark expressed that he might like to have a cocktail after I play 18 holes of crappy golf. The same year, Clark and Wexner co-hosted a controversial fundraiser for then-President George H.W. Bush's re-election campaign, as well as Ohio House Republican campaigns. Remember how important Ohio was to Bush's re-election campaign. That Bush-Kerry race literally came down to a power outage in Ohio and a whole bunch of vote flipping. But That's alleged, but it's not really alleged anymore. It's kind of been admitted to. Karl Rove, smart tech, rerouting servers. There were definitely questions about vote flipping that night. In 2021, shortly before he was due to arrive in court, in relation to this HB6 scandal, that lobbyist Neil Clark, I don't know why, he revealed that he was working on a tell-all book of stories from his decades-long career as a lobbyist, according to reporting from Fox. Well, I can imagine what's going to happen to him if he actually does that. But Clark furthered that he wanted to set the record straight about what I did during my 40 years in the State House. And that he says things that people are going to be shocked about. He told reporters the book was nearing publication in February 2021. Guess what happened in March 2021? Clark was found dead from a bullet wound to his head in a wooded area near his Florida home. The death was quickly ruled a suicide by local authorities. Sadly, Clark was not the only person tied to this scandal who would be found dead by quote-unquote suicide. A lot of people around Clinton's, Epstein, this world end up dead. Huh? That's Neil Clark. He looks like the dad from the Wonder Years. In April of 2024, and again, Neil Clark, not a good dude. Not a good dude at all. Not saying that. You know, you lie with dogs, you catch some fleas, I guess. But okay. In April 2024, the former chair of the Public Utilities Commissions of Ohio, PUCO, Sam Randazzo, was also found dead in Columbus, Ohio. Randazzo had spent years leading the charge in Ohio to deregulate the energy grid before forming the Sustainability Funding Alliance. That was a corporation that had received payments from First Energy in 2019. The morning Randazzo was supposed to check in with the court, his body was found hanging in a building he owned. Ooh, that's a bit of a message, I'm guessing. Previously, Randazzo had pled not guilty to 22 state and 11 federal charges relating to his role in the HB6 scandal. According to reporting from NBC, Randazzo was accused of taking a $4.3 million bribe from First Energy CEO Chuck Jones, we saw his picture above, and ex-senior VP Michael Dowling in 2019 for consulting services related to writing parts of a law that would send millions of dollars in subsidies to First Energy. That's a nice subsidy. That's a consulting fee, $4.3 million. That's some high quality writing right there. Randazzo had been appointed by PUCO by Governor Mike DeWine in 2019, shortly after accepting the payment from First Energy. Seems to be in line because, as Denver had pointed out, that Mike DeWine was funded partly by First Energy. Randazzo became PUCO's chair in April 2019, the same month that HB6 was introduced. According to the Ohio Capital Journal, Randazzo had received a total of $22 million in consulting fees from First Energy, including that $4.3 million just in 2019. That same year, in November of 2019, Randazzo and PUCO issued a new order. That granted First Energy a major win, which would have been worth hundreds of millions of dollars. So, in 2021, DeWine comes to Randazzo's defense when links first surfaced between Randazzo and First Energy. Of course he does. They're all covering for each other. Randazzo was not the only personal appointment made by DeWine involving one of the major players in the scandal. Again, not a surprise. In January of 2019, at the onset of the HB6 introduction, again, what's HB6 again? All right, HB6 is allowing First Energy to get this bailout for their $150 billion. All right, I think it's million. Governor Mike DeWine appointed Dan McCarthy to serve as Director of Legislative Affairs. in 2019, January. McCarthy had founded a 501c4 entity called Partners for Progress in 2017, which First Energy used to funnel money during their bribery scheme related to HB6, yet another 501c4. According to reporting from Cleveland.com, here's another one. McCarthy's Partners for Progress received $5 million from First Energy in 2017. They're just buying influence. So this is another one of these guys. $5 million from First Energy in 2017, and then another $1.2 million of that was distributed to organizations working to elect Householder as Speaker. Remember, that was what it was in the first place. It was a bribery scheme. First, they got the money to those folks. They got him elected Speaker. They then voted on the bailout, and everybody wins. Well, everybody connected to First Energy wins, as long as nobody found out. Problem is, people did find out. 1.2 million of that money, that 5 million that went from First Energy to McCarthy's Partners for Progress, ended up getting funneled down to Generation Now, which again was Householder's own organization. The group later spent millions funding ads and taking other steps to pass HB6. Mostly that's TV ads trying to propagandize and brainwash people on local TV. We need to pass HB6. It's really good for our energy. It's really for our energy, to keep our energy bills down. This is what they were buying, was ads blanketing TV, begging people to vote for this. And guess what? It worked, because people do what they're told usually, right? Another board member of Partners for Progress was Mackenzie Davis, who worked with McCarthy herself while he was president of the Success Group. Like she said, she was going to get the Success Group. McCarthy had left the Success Group to join DeWine's administration. As it relates to the power nexus in Central Ohio, the Success Group had also previously worked for Wexner's The Limited in the 1990s. This is like a marketing firm. In addition to the Ohio Electric Utility Institute, right? The Ohio Coalition for Customer Choice in Electricity, and military contractor TRW. So they're heavily involved in the energy sector, in promoting and advertising and building a name in Ohio in the energy sector. Specific. Tangentially, again, TRW also had acquired Cam Gears back in 1965. She goes way, way deep here. The latter being a firm managed by Douglas Sims Lease and founded by Lease's father. Lease then became the International VP of Customer Relations for TRW the same year of the merger. Lease then goes on to hire Epstein in the early 1980s and is believed to have played a crucial role in connecting Epstein, the Saudi arms dealer Adnan Khashoggi, and his former business partner Stephen Hoffenberg. So it all comes full circle, and that's why she's talking about the tangent from TRW, is that there's also a TRW connection and link with this guy Lease, all right, to Epstein. Further and notably, the Success Group, this marketing firm, was founded and chaired by longtime Ohio Democratic figure Dennis Wojciechowski, who acted as its CEO from 1984 to 2003. Why is that relevant? He had previously lobbied on behalf of Sir James Goldsmith during a failed takeover bid of Goodyear Tire, which is Akron-based, another Ohio company. Wojciechowski had attempted to cover his business associations with the controversial Goldsmith by not registering him as his client, but instead listed a Cleveland-based law firm, which had hired him on Goldsmith's behalf, right, as the client. So they didn't want to, show the people of Ohio that this guy was involved in brokering a sale of Goodyear to a foreigner. So they sneakily hired a Cleveland law firm to mask it. This guy's associations with Goldsmith in the late 80s are certainly prudent to the Epstein-Wexner takeover of New Albany, as Epstein was apparently, again, first introduced to this elite power nexus at Goldsmith's New York mansion in the early 1970s. All right, so who's this guy Goldsmith again? All right, Paul Goldsmith, right? So he's the one that tried to buy Goodyear Tire. So Goldsmith, where are we here, was closely affiliated with Robert Maxwell. No wonder why they want to hide that. And Rothschild banking interests, as well as a member of the organized crime-linked Claremont Club in the UK. God, there's so many people that are linked to you. What we need is like a 7 C's mapping of all these people and how they link and where they're going. At some point, I might try to do that. All right. Wojciechowski found himself embroiled in a previous lobbying scandal with Wexner, which came to light in 1995. All these guys are so corrupt, just buying each other off for favor. And you know why they do it? Because they get massive return on investment every time. Every time it works. And when they don't, they go to jail, they get a slap on the wrist, they pay a fine, they do it again. Right? The Ohio lobbyist in 1995 hosted dinner parties at his home where he illegally distributed $500 checks to state legislators from 6 different subsidiaries of the Limited. So that's your $3,000 limit, I guess. Maybe there's a state limit of $500. And each one came from different organizations. So technically, that's legal, I guess. I'm guessing not. Previously, while a state representative, Wojciechowski, all right, had chaired the Citizens Commission on Nuclear Power in Ohio and was a key figure in the 70s effort to amend the method of how electricity utility companies calculate their rate base. I can imagine that that's not going to benefit the public, but yet it's going to benefit the energy companies because he's working on behalf of the lobbyists, right? These scandals and their players have direct implications on the future of Ohio's data center growth and perfectly illustrate how a small group of businessmen and lobbyists can commandeer local and state government policymaking. So this is, again, just a handful of people. They're having a ton of influence over it. So now they're getting securing questionable tax exemptions is easy in Ohio. Why is it easy in Ohio? Because of this public-private partnership stuff. So in 2013, Ohio passed a sales tax exemption that covers computer data center equipment. How convenient, in addition to materials used in constructing the centers. This tax exemption remains controversial, particularly given the increase in regional electricity prices and other issues that come with new data centers. What about the profitability in data centers and the fact that they don't need a fucking subsidy? Now, according to a January 2025 report from Policy Matters Ohio, quote, if the investments announced by Amazon, Google, and Microsoft in the past 2 years are all covered by the tax break, the state and localities could lose out on almost $1.6 billion in sales tax revenue, with only modest job creation to show for it. All right. I don't even know if that 1.6 billion is correct. I'm guessing that that's overinflated. Let's call it 1.2 billion. That's still a lot of money the state's just giving away for the privilege of having these businesses house themselves there, jack up the energy bills, and drain the resources of the local community. The positive regulation for the data center industry in Ohio does not stop there, with the report further noting the state's unique property tax abatements. So here we go. Here's more benefit and favor for the data center companies. Quote, in addition to the sales tax exemption, many Ohio data centers also get local subsidies through property tax abatements. It's worth noting that Ohio does not tax tangible property like data center equipment. In Virginia, the largest site for data centers, Loudoun County, received more than $600 million in property taxes from data centers in 2023, the vast bulk of which was from taxes on equipment Ohio doesn't levy. So Ohio is providing large, invisible subsidies in the form of lesser property taxes on data center equipment than some other states. Some of the data center operators also receive other state subsidies. For example, even prior to its recent announcement that it would invest another $10 billion in Ohio data centers, Amazon was getting a job creation tax credit, so it's credited with much of the state income tax paid by its data center employees. Wait, what? It's given a rebate. Again, it's credited with the state income tax that the data center employees that work for Amazon in Ohio and pay income tax, they're kicking that back to Amazon. Why? Because the people that work for Amazon don't use the roads? Because they don't use the fire department? That insane. Because Les Wexner brokered it that way. According to 2024 reporting from Cleveland.com, these stadium-sized data centers, again, stadium-sized, from Amazon, Google, and Meta, plus less familiar names like Quality Technology Services and Cyrus One, hello CIA, hello NSA, often employ 20 to 30 or so workers when operational. That's it. With some earning tax perks for promising as few as 10 new jobs. For example, again, Amazon's 3 data centers located in Dublin, Hilliard, and New Albany received about $100 million in state subsidies, according to a 2016 report from Good Jobs First. These tax breaks, while leading to minimal employment boosts, are no small factor within Amazon's $7.8 billion plans to build more than 24 data centers in Central Ohio. If you're living in Central Ohio, get the hell out of there. I'm telling you right now. They're taking over. Final approvals for these tax exemptions are made by the Ohio Tax Credit Authority, which itself is a division of the Ohio Development Services Authority, the director of which is notably chosen by the governor of Ohio. Remember, that's Mike DeWine, that guy that was involved in all that corruption stuff back then. Public sector subsidies and tax exemptions carry a unique history in Ohio and have been routinely exploited by Wexner-controlled business interests for several decades. Take, for example, the Limited's efforts to relocate the CIA's Southern Air Transport to the Columbus area Rickenbacker Airport in 1995, which they kind of did, at least let's say in part. Wexner's The Limited Inc., then under the power of attorney of one Jeffrey Epstein, specifically sought out not one but 2 CIA-linked airlines to run its cargo during that period. I can't imagine why. As noted in, again, Whitney's book, One Nation Under Blackmail, which you should have on your shelves if you don't already. I own it. Beginning in 1992. By the way, you can also download it for free. It's on Audible. There's multiple ways to get that book. And Whitney herself has linked to a free version of this book. Okay. Beginning in 1992, the Limited began to be linked to its efforts of different airlines to relocate or set up a major presence at Rickenbacker. The first of these was the Russian state-owned airline Aeroflot. That's unusual, which created a North American subsidiary called North American Aeroflot, or NAA. Wexner's The Limited was the main force behind NAA and its activities at Rickenbacker. NAA's activities at Rickenbacker also intimately involved Arrow Air, a CIA-linked airline that had smuggled weapons as part of the Iran-Contra operation. Now remember that back in like the mid 1990s, like we were involved in Russia, in the downfall of Russia, and this is like the Yeltsin era. This is before Putin takes over. So right now you're talking about like the Robert Baron era, and when Putin's there, and we're sending guys to try to get Yeltsin elected as president of Russia, and they're totally in bed with CIA. They're operating all over Russia at that point. So it's funny that they set up a Aeroflot North America. I didn't know that. Less than a month after NAA and Aero Air began running cargo through Rickenbacker, the main CIA-linked Iran-Contra airline, because there were multiple, Southern Air Transport, began its own efforts to become the dominant force at Rickenbacker. Southern Air first cloaked its initial attempts via the company Polar Air Cargo, which was comprised of 3 companies, Southern Air, Polaris Corp., and Nedmark. And yes, that Polaris Corp., like Sea-Doo Polaris Corp. At the time, SAT had the same owner it had during Iran-Contra, former CIA lawyer James Bastian. Polar Air later dissolved its relationship with SAT and sought to expand its Columbus operations. However, the Limited wanted nothing to do with this newer iteration of Polar Air and instead began courting SAT directly. So now you have the split. And meanwhile, again, they own them all. There's the Southern Air Transport plane. Boeing. They continue. Again, this is from Whitney, Webb, and Mark Goodwin's article from UnlimitedHangout.com. Crucial to these negotiations was a generous package of incentives from the state of Ohio that included a 75% credit against its corporate tax liability for the next 10 years. That's a $5 million low interest rate loan on top of it, and a $400,000 job training grant. So now you're literally giving them money to train people how to work there. The package was offered by Ohio politicians in efforts to please powerful Ohio businessmen, namely Les Wexner. SAT ultimately did relocate to Rickenbacker to run cargo for Wexner's The Limited because the incentives deal was too good to turn down. Of course it was, because the CIA made sure it was. Reporting from local Ohio journalist Bob Petrakis linked Jeffrey Epstein, who had a background in arms smuggling and was enmeshed in Wexner's finances, to the efforts to bring SAT to Columbus. I don't think it was much of a stretch. Petrakis later reported that key Iran-Contra figures like Alan Fires Jr. and Richard Secord had also been instrumental in SAT's relocation. Yeah, Wexner is, boy howdy, what a lucky guy. It's just amazing. Oh my goodness. Right? He was also told by both Ohio's Inspector General and Franklin County's then sheriff that they believed Epstein and Wexner had ties to CIA. No, you're kidding. More on what The Limited may or may not have been doing clandestinely with these airlines is discussed extensively in One Nation Under Blackmail, but is beyond the scope of this article. So go read that. Okay. Yes, exactly, Cowboy Kitty. Surely we can all vote our way out of this. And you would know because you're in Ohio. Notably, despite the lofty promises from Ohio officials and lobbyists working for The Limited, SAT, Southern Air Transport, did not create the jobs it had promised. No. It did not construct the maintenance facility it had promised to build. Nah. And it began to financially implode rather quickly, despite the $3.5 million in taxpayer funds it had received, not counting the low-interest loans. Okay, where'd the money go? Where's the money, Lebowski? Southern Air Transport then filed for bankruptcy in 1998, and its collapse was likely a controlled demolition, with $32 million of company funds allegedly appearing in the personal bank account of James Bastian's wife not long before it went bankrupt. James Bastian, again, was the owner of Southern Air Transport. He was the setup. He was the fall guy. He was one of them, but they certainly set him up. In the years since, CIA-linked airlines like Landmark Aviation, as well as Wexner-linked Lane Aviation, made their homes, guess where? At Rickenbacker. It's really like Wexner's home airport. These two airlines, after heavy lobbying from local businessmen, quote unquote, saw local law changed yet again in 2011 that can clear private planes without regular customs checks at the private terminals they control at Rickenbacker. Come on, man. So wait a minute. Now these guys literally can run CIA stuff totally outside of customs checks wherever the fuck in the world they want out of private terminals in bumfuck Columbus, sorry to those who live near there, Ohio, and run them anywhere in the world that they feel like it, unchecked, just because Les Wexner. Yeah, he's not CIA or anything, right? All right, now we get to Anduril and Erebor. These are the drone companies that have been recruited and the corruption that has been wrought in bringing these drone companies to produce directly in Ohio, and why. So now Rickenbacker is due to have a new company grace its airstrips. In January 2025, Governor DeWine announced that defense contractor Anduril planned to lease property at Rickenbacker to construct nearly $1 billion manufacturing facility dubbed Arsenal One. That's a frightening company. I don't like Anduril at all. But whether I like it or not is irrelevant, unfortunately. As illustrated in previous reporting from Unlimited Hangout, Anduril was founded by Palmer Luckey, a longtime associate of Epstein crony and Palantir co-founder Peter Thiel. Luckey met Thiel when he was only 19, shortly after Luckey founded his first company. You know, Thiel meets a lot of these young single guys, tech bros, that, anyway. And Luckey is apparently married to Matt Gates' sister, I hear. Now, Luckey's first company was Oculus Rift, which was later sold to Facebook. Those are the goggles, the VR glasses, while Thiel sat on Facebook's board. So maybe he was involved in getting Luckey paid out to begin with. Shortly after he founded the Modern Warfare Equipment and Drone Manufacturing Company, Anduril was then backed by, conveniently, Thiel's Founders Fund, only then to be joined by another Palantir co-founder, Joe Lonsdale. We're going to talk about him below. Luckey's Anduril would not exist without the assistance of Thiel and several executives from Thiel's Palantir. That's a definitive statement. Absolutely true. As Unlimited Hangout has reported in numerous articles beginning in 2020, Palantir is a CIA front explicitly aimed at resurrecting the controversial surveillance dragnet once housed by the Pentagon's DARPA, known as Total Information Awareness. CIA sought to use warrantless dragnet surveillance of Americans to prevent crime and terrorism, quote-unquote, before it happens, i.e. pre-crime, a field which Palantir has since pioneered and which was essentially now made DOJ policy by Trump's Attorney General in his first term, Bill Barr. All right. We also talked about DARPA and TIA and Palantir, and at the time also LifeLog and Facebook, and how Thiel sat in the middle of all of this. That was when J.D. Vance was first announced as Trump's running mate, and people were like, who's that? And Whitney wrote this long article, which, by the way, I read on How Did We Miss That? It was over an hour long. And that talked about a lot about J.D. Vance and Thiel's background. Previous reporting on the founding of Anduril from Unlimited Hangout explains the intimate connections between Luckey, Thiel, and the Epstein network long before the announcement of Arsenal One coming to Central Ohio. So it's no surprise when they actually did. One of those Palantir executives who later came to Anduril, Trey Stevens, worked at a government intelligence agency. He declines to specify which one before joining Palantir. From there, Trey Stevens joined Thiel's Founders Fund and ended up on the boards of some of the most controversial Founders Fund-funded companies, such as Carbine 911. Financed in part by Epstein and the brainchild of former Israeli Prime Minister and Epstein associate Ehud Barak, Carbine's platform also involves invasive data collection from civilians and predictive policing functionalities. They're all about this pre-crime. They want to get into people's heads and predict when they're going to commit a crime and arrest them beforehand based on their behavior and patterns and social media activity. On Carbine's board, Trey Stevens originally sat alongside Ehud Barak, as well as there's Israeli intelligence-linked figures like Pinchas Bukris, who's former commander of Israel's Unit 8200, Lital Lashem, who's the former Israeli intelligence operative, who we now know works for documented CIA asset and former head of the infamous mercenary group Blackwater, Eric Prince. And then, of course, Nicole Junkerman. We've talked about Nicole, her in the past, and how they've censored Johnny Vedmore's reporting on Junkerman multiple times. Anytime her name comes up, basically, it gets blowed out. She's an Epstein associate who has since rebranded as a venture capitalist in emerging technologies and fintech. She's still out there. What she's doing is using copyright claims to get videos about her taken down, claiming that they're smears and lies. Stevens still remains today on Carbine's board, where he now sits alongside former U.S. Homeland Security chiefs Michael Chertoff from the Bush admin and Kirstjen Nielsen from the Trump admin. It's just a big circle jerk. Okay, so tell me how the Trump admin, again, is fighting the deep state, right? Thanks in part to Thiel's influence over the early Trump admin, Stevens was chosen to oversee Trump's transition team for the Defense Department, where he steered Trump's early Pentagon policies. I think he also steered him to hire Mike Flynn as National Security Advisor. That worked out really well. At the time, Stevens was also in talks with Palmer Luckey to create a new company. And after Luckey left Facebook, remember, Facebook bought Oculus, which means they bought Luckey, and that he went to go work for them under a cloud of controversy in late March 2017. Palmer Luckey and Trey Stevens created Anduril, and other Palantir executives were recruited to join the company. Within a year of its existence, Anduril had already netted millions in contracts from the Department of Homeland Security. Stevens has remained at Thiel's Founders Fund since co-founding Anduril. So he's got multiple roles and he wears multiple hats and is making a ton of money, by the way, in multiple roles. An underreported revelation within the recent batch of Epstein emails released by the DOJ is that Epstein likely co-invested in Anduril alongside Founders Fund via Thiel's Valor Ventures firm, specifically the Valor Global Fund 3. It appears as if Epstein invested $15 million into Valor through his Southern Trust Company in June of 2015. In an email from Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak to Epstein associate Nicole Junkerman, Barak implies that Thiel and Epstein co-owned the fund, although a spokesman for Thiel would later deny the claims of co-ownership to the Byline Times, while confirming that Epstein was a limited partner. So Thiel didn't own it, but Epstein did. So maybe it wasn't a partnership, maybe it was all Epstein owned. In recent years, Anduril and Palmer Luckey himself have certainly grown in public notoriety, including an appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. On that podcast, Luckey expressed the need for the United States to stop being the world police and instead become the world's gun store. No, because you're only going to arm one side. Unsurprisingly, Luckey's company would be set to benefit immensely from such an international policy pivot, especially after the completion of Arsenal 1 in the Columbus area. He's only going to be supplying one side with drones, though. He's not going to arm both sides of the conflict because we're usually on one side of the conflict. This is insane. In a story all too similar to that of booming data center expansion, the build-out of Arsenal 1 was again made possible in no small part due to massive tax breaks unanimously approved by the Tax Credit Authority of Ohio. Only a couple of weeks after the California-based defense contractor first expressed the intention to come to Ohio, Governor Mike DeWine and the Ohio Department of Development Director Lydia Mahalik had already announced the approval of significant state tax incentives, including employment tax credits for 30 years worth an estimated $452 million. Why? He had already announced that they were going there. Why are you giving them all this stuff? Those tax breaks were part of a massive incentives package prepared by the controversial group discussed earlier in this article, Jobs Ohio, along with the involvement of the Wexner-linked One Columbus. And again, remember that Wexner is making money throughout all of this on the side. The package, Jobs Ohio, that's a huge package, huge. The package that Jobs Ohio, One Columbus, and their partners prepared for Anduril is even larger than the one that they offered to Intel in New Albany, because they know that in the end, Anduril is going to be bigger for them than Intel. And because of Thiel's involvement and Epstein's ownership in Anduril, they have much more stake in wanting to bring this company into a Wexner-friendly area. All right. Lucky also has stated that Jobs Ohio's offer was an important factor in their move to Rickenbacker. I would guess that if Peter Thiel told him that he's moving Anduril to Rickenbacker, he's moving Anduril to Rickenbacker. This, by the way, is a conversation 15 minutes long where he's talking about the plant that they're opening there. He's just a complete slimeball, by the way, with his mullet head, clown show, floral print shirts. And upon completion, Anduril claims that the 5 million square foot advanced manufacturing facility is geared to build drones, missiles, and other high-tech unpiloted military weapons in order to address urgent defense needs. No bueno. Lucky has stated that Ohio is central to his company's plans, stating that Ohio is going to be critical to allowing us to move fast into Arsenal 1 so that we can build the arms that the United States needs, though they don't, to deter, when necessary, large-scale conflicts. He's talking about firing on us, by the way, not quote-unquote perceived enemies. Notice he's not talking about foreigners. And his name is Lucky is just perfectly on brand. All right, so Palmer further noted that, quote, we need to build tens of thousands of autonomous fighter jets, autonomous missiles, and other combat systems that will again deter these wars. They don't deter these wars. Nobody was attacking us. They're using them to attack other countries, you fucking clown. And if they break out, win them. No, they're breaking them out. With the expansion of U.S. military action in Iran in March 2026, Lucky and Anduril are situated to profit generously as Arsenal 1 is set to begin production of their first product, the autonomous fighter jet, YFQ-44A, by the second quarter of this year. That's like next quarter. And yet it's Lucky's other Ohio-based company that's arguably positioned to make even more money than selling weapons during wartime, the stablecoin bank Erebor. These assholes and their goddamn Lord of the Rings fucking names. Lucky was a very early Bitcoiner, having expressed his involvement in the network as early as 2010. This is where I believe you're going to see a lot of Mark Goodwin expertise come into play. Mark has since seen the light on Bitcoin and crypto and what a grift it is. All right. But Lucky was an early Bitcoiner, having expressed his involvement in the network as early as 2010. Only 1 year after its creation, and choosing buy more Bitcoin as his quote for the 2013 Forbes 30 under 30. As noted in previous investigations from Unlimited Hangout, the 2024 Trump campaign made Bitcoin, stablecoins, and crypto in general a significant part of their platform, and the first year of a second admin was chock full of executive orders and new regulations enabling this behemoth of an industry and absolving them of all crimes, apparently. Lucky has been an outspoken supporter of Trump's, including a $100,000 donation to his first inauguration, and was allegedly let go from Facebook in 2017 due to his political views regarding Trump, which is funny because now they all kiss Trump's ass, including Zuckerberg. Lucky also credits Trump's book, Art of the Deal, as inspiring him to co-found Oculus, and even wrote Trump a letter in 2011 urging him to run for president. Except that Trump didn't really write Art of the Deal. Tony Schwartz, I think it was, guy. Thus, it should be of little surprise that in 2025, Lucky and a crew of ardent Trump supporters, including Palantir co-founders Peter Thiel and Joe Lonsdale, set out to actualize the second administration's stated goal of pushing dollar hegemony through stablecoins by founding Erebor Bank. Now, I think he's going to have some competition here from our Commerce Secretary, but he could be in on this too, for all we know. Much like Anduril and Palantir, the name of Lucky's latest venture is a token reference, a mountain named Erebor, which houses the dragon Smog's immense fortune of gold and jewels. Even though Ohio is arguably not at the forefront of financial technology, the founders of Erebor decided Columbus would serve as the grounds for their fortress of digital currencies. Erebor was controversially granted an OCC charter only 4 months after their application, notably the first granted from Trump-appointed controller of the currency, Jonathan Gould. Can you smell the corruption at every single level? Everyone's getting their beaks wet. Everyone's getting bought off, and nobody's stopping it. And nobody's able to stop it. Within the announcement of Erebor, which includes investments from Palantir co-founders Joe Lonsdale and Peter Thiel, no surprise, was the announcement of Jacob Hirschman as co-CEO. Who's Hirschman? He was previously an advisor to Circle, that's another stablecoin out there, including a stint as chief legal officer to the second largest USD stablecoin issuer. Okay. Erebor's launch also noted intentions to become the most regulated entity in conducting and facilitating stablecoin transactions, and to fill the void left after the collapse of SVB, which occurred in no small part due to the actions of Founders Fund. This is so incestuous. So Thiel launching Erebor is going to fix the problem that Founders Fund caused, but Erebor is founded by Founders Fund. Right, gotcha. The rise and collapse of Silicon Valley Bank was chronicled in a previous section of Unlimited Hangouts, the Chain series, including noting that Circle's USDC had kept reserves at their now failed bank. Oh, you were supposed to have matching reserves for every stablecoin Circle dollar USDC that you had issued, but that once that bank collapsed, it was basically just funny money. The bank collapse led Circle's stablecoin to depeg as low as 86 cents. Remember that these are supposed to be pegged to the dollar. They're supposed to be about 99 cents to a dollar. Howard Lutnick, the longtime CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald and the holder of the world's largest stablecoin, Tether's USDT reserves, noted in a speech at Bitcoin 2024 that Circle had a $3.3 billion of your reserves uninsured in the Silicon Valley Bank when it went bust. Tether's ties to the Epstein network was also investigated deeply within the Chain series, including founder Brock Pierce's intimate relationship with Epstein. Nothing but creepiness all around. Lutnick, or Nutlick, who currently serves as Trump's Commerce Secretary and also brokered the deal that got Rumble its money, appeared at the CIA-funded Chainalysis conference in 2024. to express his affinity for stablecoins. Why not? It's made him insanely rich. He's got all these reserves without ever having to pay interest on all the tether that he's got issued. Dollar hegemony is fundamental to the United States of America. It matters to us, to our economy. That's why I'm a fan of properly backed stablecoins, Tether and Circle. Oops. During his presidential campaign in 2024, Vivek the snake charmer Ramaswamy took a policy position on stablecoins, claiming that he would order the Federal Reserve to grant stablecoin issuers the same access to Fed facilities that incumbent banks enjoy, even though there's no reserve matching dollar for dollar the way they claimed initially, and then they just decided, nah, we're not really going to do that anymore. Nobody said or did shit. Ramaswamy also responded to Tether's CEO Paolo Andre Ardoino on Twitter in March of 2025, expressing his affinity for stablecoins, helping reinforce U.S. dollar global reserve status. As Ohio governor, he can be expected to be a friend to Erebor. He likely will also be a shareholder, would be my guess. This is particularly obvious when one considers that Ramaswamy's Columbus-based Strive Asset Management was seed funded by Peter Thiel and his Founders Fund. Current Vice President and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance's Narya Capital, also founded by Thiel. Howard Lutnick and Kenneth Fitzgerald, also involved with Thiel heavily. And Erebor backer Joe Lonsdale, also co-founder of Palantir, partner of Palmer Luckey in Anduril. Do you see how incestuous all of this is? They all are just jerking each other off. And this is where she's predicting and starting to see, how is this all going to play out? What happens? A Vivek win in Ohio for governor will mean more of the same. Just like the a Republican win in 2026, and if they retain Congress, we're going to see more of the same versus gridlock, which we would see if the Democrats get elected and hearings announced. So here we go. Vivek Ramaswamy, whose career began in VC after graduating with an undergrad degree in biology from Harvard, is but one of many political stewards sprung from the power nexus Wexner and Epstein birthed in central Ohio decades ago. Much has been written about J.D. Vance's connections to Wexner and Thiel, as illustrated in a previous investigation by Unlimited Hangout, as well as one by Dissent in Bloom, but far less has been spoken about Vance's old friend and college buddy, Ramaswamy, who remains just as connected to the Wexner Consortium as our current vice president. Ramaswamy was an early adopter of the anti-woke movement, being labeled the CEO of Anti-Woke Inc. by The New Yorker, with his anti-woke investment from Strive being bankrolled by, guess who? Thiel, Vance, Lonsdale, and Lutnick. According to BitcoinTreasuries.net, Strive Asset Management now sits just outside the top 10 largest public holders of Bitcoin in the world, with 13,311 Bitcoin. Remember that Bitcoin's worth like $100,000 a piece. So add 6 zeros onto that, and it's worth $13 billion. Strove, funny, to become the antithesis of woke Inc. investment firms such as BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, and yet in the process, the firm's founder has found himself merely months away from taking the throne of one of the most important states in the nation, an appointment whose legislative decisions could influence not just the region, but literally the world itself. While many push the rhetoric that Ramaswamy's sudden removal from Doge was some sort of demotion, his push to become governor of Ohio brings with it the lever to enforce states' rights and enforce the new anti-woke Silicon Valley in Ohio's heartland. But it's best to not get distracted by the incessant framing of woke or not woke when discussing Ramaswamy's campaign, for the very stake for the domestic winners of the artificial intelligence arms race may very well fall into the Cincinnati natives' hands. Who's he even running against? I don't know. Who's the Democrat running for governor in Ohio right now? Anyone know? As Wexner and Epstein proved throughout the 20th century, local and regional governments can be bought and sold, much like the acres of land their New Albany company has leased and sold to the up-and-coming data center behemoths. This phenomenon is unfortunately quite known to Ohio, with Wexner and Epstein, in effect, building their own government within the New Albany area, not to mention the HB6 scandal that rocked the Ohio State Senate and left 2 men dead at the end of the last decade. Oops. There's Vivek and the couch fucker. Ramaswamy, whose campaigns have taken immense monetary donations from the likes of Susquehanna International Group founder Jeff Yass, Bitcoin evangelist Ross Stevens, and Epstein associate Glenn Dubin, whose wife is Eva, has spent years in the circle of the technocratic elite that grew out of Silicon Valley. He ass-kissed his way to the middle. In his speech at a Lincoln Day dinner in Ohio, according to reporting from the Chronicle, Ramaswamy expressed the intention to move the power nexus out of California and back into the heartland of Ohio. Quote, if it was Silicon Valley leading the way for the last 10 years, it should be the Ohio River Valley for the next 10 years, leading the way in manufacturing, energy, and the development of artificial intelligence, or AI, as if nobody knew what AI stood for. He's so disingenuous. As noted throughout this article, Ohio's transformation into the Silicon Heartland has come courtesy of a nexus of Wexner-created public-private partnerships and dark money networks that are bleeding Ohio taxpayers dry by siphoning public funds to make their technocratic vision for the state a reality, while raising the cost of living and gutting public services on which many Ohioans rely, including people directly watching this right now in this chat. Despite Wexner's role in financing Epstein and Epstein's own role in the rise of New Albany and the public-private partnership takeover of Ohio state economic development policy, little is being done to prosecute any of the egregious corruption documented in this article, because they don't want to end up dead, because 2 people that had testified did. Instead, thanks to a series of Wexner-funded governors, Wexner's master plan that started with New Albany has now been replicated throughout the state, conveniently. Ramaswamy, despite having once said that transparency is everything, and his claims to have saved taxpayers' money at Doge, which he didn't, has made no mention of any plans to bring transparency to these dark money funnels that benefit Ohio's richest men on the taxpayers' dime. Wow, go figure. He hasn't even acknowledged that these systems exist. Why would he? While it's currently unknown how much money Ramaswamy's current gubernatorial campaign has received from this network alone, his running mate Rob McCauley has taken money from Wexner's Bath & Body Works, the New Albany Company, and the consulting firm of New Albany Company partner Alex Fisher for his past campaigns. McCauley is also the chairman of the Senate Energy and Public Utilities Committee and was the lead sponsor of Senate Bill 52, which is a piece of legislation that gives county commissioners new powers to kill wind or solar projects early in their development. Why would they want to do that? Well, because First Energy, remember, is looking to get subsidies on nuclear plants, and they don't necessarily invest in these other technologies. He notably received $13,500 from energy industry PACs during that HB6 scandal. Ramaswamy, like DeWine and Kasich before him, is on track to continue to oversee the final stages of Ohio's transformation into this Silicon heartland with Wexner's New Albany at its center. This is decades of planning. And yet, the overreaching implications of this story hardly remain domiciled to just New Albany, nor the central Ohio region. In fact, this influence nexus creeps far beyond the borders of the state, even outside the jurisdiction of the country. Yep. Welcome to TechNate Ohio. The localized issues downstream of a string of data centers popping up in an Ohioan municipality are numerous. Electricity prices, aquifer damage, drainage, strains on local governments and public infrastructure, air pollution and noise. When tax breaks and other incentives delivered by purchased state regulators are given to these server stewards of the internet's lymphatic system, to the manufacturers of autonomous war machines, to the stablecoin bankers for agentic entities, or to the silicon brains behind AI usurping human thought, the regional conflict of interests collide with global control structures at breakneck speed. The unfortunate example that Wexner and Epstein have made of Ohio during the last half-century are but signposts of an encroaching technocratic theology that parasitically feeds on local hosts for the purposes of gestation and growth into a far larger and far more dangerous and powerful force. This is not to belittle the very real and tangible effects that citizens of Ohio must endure and push back upon, but rather that this is a trope of how the technate governance structure utilizes balkanization and the limited resources of a local government as a means to pursue centralized outcomes of power within the hands of the technocratic elite. It reminds me very much of what private equity does. All right, they come in and chart, and they suck up all kinds of fees themselves while spending the money because they've now taken over. They're the money guys. All right, they've bought their way in, but they're now able to spend the funds however they want, and nobody's checking this. The decentralization theater that's taken rise within the talking points of the internet's most successful entrepreneurs is masking the greatest centralization of power in history. Remember how everyone wanted decentralized Bitcoin? Palmer Lucky's not talking about that now. Vivek, though he's got 13,000 Bitcoin, he's not talking about decentralized. One simply has to look at the businesses investigated in this article to see a fully realized stack of technology that can influence human behavior immensely, perhaps even at the societal level. Situated within the confines of Wexner's terrarium are banking rails for monetary weapons of mass destruction, stablecoins, literal rails for building literal weapons of mass destruction, drones, and digital think tanks capable of delivering insurmountable payloads of destruction to content creation and distribution, AI. This three-pronged fork, held by the very hand of the very power nexus that brought Epstein face-to-face with the highest levels of government figures, will leave hardly a crumb for us humans to fight over on the plate of world power. This is a coup d'etat of the global order, of the very nature of humanity, actualized by a handful of men with bottomless pockets who were willing to wait decades for their plans to come to fruition. Had these conquerors simply stormed the gates of Capitol Hill, they would have been met with the defensive force of a nation, while simultaneously revealing their now failed intentions of domination to the entire planet. The world will not be won overnight by overt kinetic force, but rather by synchronized maneuvers on numerous fronts over numerous decades, by a seemingly innocuous string of conveniences woven into a penitentiary. Okay, that would be the digital prison grid. Ramaswamy, as noted in the introduction of to this article, spoke these quiet parts out loud upon his departure of Doge. Musk and Ramaswamy were on the same page, he said, with the former taking his technologic approach and the latter focused at the state level of governance, all in an effort to divide and conquer to save the country. You mean to control demolition of the country. While there is little evidence of their efforts saving the country, there is certainly quite a lot of evidence that points toward a division and conquest, as exemplified by the corruption and consolidation within the Buckeye State. Long gone are the days of Alexander the Great and Attila the Hun, when peoples were enslaved and commodified by the victors of a violent land war. Today, the fronts of the New World War are at the intersection of mind and technology, where the Silicon conquistadors lay entrenched in their data centers, banks, and factories. While the internet is routinely compared to an ethereal cloud, in reality, its infrastructure remains tethered to the physical world, a cluster of chips and processors connected by wires to data centers powered by generators built on land, owned, maintained, and governed by humans. Yes, humans. If this central Ohio fiefdom is allowed to prosper without hardly an investigation or meaningful social pushback, which it likely won't, the outcome and impact on the world might be, and likely will be, disastrous. Centered and maintained in New Albany, Wexner's and Epstein's breakaway civilization could very well break apart civilization, leaving behind a scattering of pieces to be easily consolidated and conquered in its disruptive technocratic wake. And look at what's happening in Syria right now, for example, and how they've balkanized that country. Look at how they're still right now balkanizing Ukraine at the moment, right? Leslie is a girl's name, but we're not going to gender shame anyone here at the moment, Denver. There's plenty of other things to complain about Leslie Wexner's corruption that we don't have to talk about his name, though it is a sissy boy name, right? All right. Crazy. Again, that was Whitney Webb and Mark Goodwin, UnlimitedHangout.com, talking about TechNate Ohio and the private partnerships, public-private partnerships that are siphoning public funds to recruit and give tax incentives to private industry at the expense of Ohio taxpayers. Because remember, Ohio isn't a bank. They can't issue their currency. So when they're giving tax breaks based upon income, that means that they're just going without that revenue now. They're going to have to find another way to recover it, or they're going to have to find services that are cut in order to subsidize that, which sucks. Thank you, everyone, for sticking with me through all that. I know that was long, and I appreciate everyone listening to this whole article, and I hope you learned something from it. I certainly did. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. The ways to do that are using Cash App, $Indie News Network, at ko-fi.com/Indie News Network. That'll pop something up on screen. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. Do that as friends and family. Patreon.com/Indie News Network. You can do a monthly over at our news website, IndieNewsNow.com. It's not only the name of the show, but it's also the name of a website that you can read aggregated independent news 24/7. And you can leave a tip for the network there at the Keep the News Free section. Or you can subscribe monthly or annually over at Substack. We have two different Substacks, INNnewsletter.com for the network and IndieMediaToday.com for me and the stuff that I produce personally. Okay. Now, I know that was long, but I actually do have like a whole other show of stuff that I was going to cover. Most of it is going to start with Fuck Israel. We're going to start there. And then we're going to get to Miss Rachel and what's going on at Dilley. We'll do a little lightning round. We will get to, what else? There was something else. The sanctioned reporters and journalists and The thing with the UN guy resigning or having to step down. We'll get to that in a minute. But start with Tiberius. All right. Reminder that Israel, they said 40 babies were beheaded to justify their genocide in Gaza. The entire Western media class ran with this for weeks to manufacture consent for the crime of the century. Over 160 children were blown up by the U.S. and Iran. The same media class barely made a whimper. Absolutely depraved. Okay, Western media still doesn't admit that they were wrong about the 40 beheaded babies. They just went silent on it and moved on to the next manufactured propaganda story. Or worse, they continue to perpetrate it with this stupid Sheryl Sandberg quote-unquote documentary. Of course, the news that we got yesterday was beyond infuriating. So I'm going to bring Dave DeCamp's clinical analysis of it, and then I'll rage a little bit about it. Rafe and Colin are going to cover this tomorrow night on INN News. Be sure to check in on that. And we also talked about this when it passed the Knesset several weeks ago in our Fuck Israel segment. But now they have passed the death penalty bill for Palestinians, specifically Palestinian prisoners. The bill mandates executions of people convicted of deadly acts of terrorism with the intent to deny the existence of the State of Israel. The Israeli Knesset, and again, this is Dave DeCamp, okay, Indie Media Award honoree for antiwar.com, also an Indie Media Award honoree and contributor over at IndieNewsNow.com. The Israeli Knesset passed a bill on Monday that mandates the death penalty for Palestinians convicted of deadly, quote-unquote, acts of terror, an effort that was led by Israeli National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, leader of the Jewish Power Party, who was seen celebrating with champagne after the vote. And I'm not going to show the video of that. The bill is designed to apply exclusively to Palestinians by mandating the death penalty for a quote-unquote terrorist convicted of killing a person, quote, with the intent to deny the existence of the State of Israel, unquote. How do you determine that? Well, according to Haaretz, the law is now applicable in any territory that Israel effectively controls, which includes the occupied West Bank and more than 50% of the Gaza Strip. That's that so-called yellow line. In his remarks on the vote, Ben-Gvir made clear that the bill was designed to execute only those convicted of killing Israeli Jews. Sure. The State of Israel is changing the rules of the game today. Whoever murders Jews will not continue to breathe and enjoy conditions in prison. This is a day of justice for the victims. Oh my God, the gaslight. And a day of deterrence for our enemies. Fuck these war criminals. There he is with his bottle of champagne that he tried to open in the chamber and the security stopped him. The bill was supported by 62 lawmakers in the Knesset, including Israeli Prime Minister, the fake Benjamin Netanyahu. Who is he still in Berlin? Has his plane ever taken off? Whole other question to ask. 48 Knesset members voted against the legislation and 1 abstained. So remember that when they say it's only Ben-Gvir and these extremist hardliners, 62 lawmakers voted to make murder legal. The Israeli rights group B'Tselem strongly condemned the bill and noted the high conviction rate in Israeli military courts where Palestinians who live in the West Bank are put on trial. The penalty, execution by hanging, must be carried out within 90 days of sentencing with no possibility of pardon. The death penalty will be determined in military courts where only Palestinians are tried. This is so monstrous. These courts have an approximately 96% conviction rate, based largely on confessions extracted under duress and torture during interrogations. So yeah, they hook up a car battery to these guys' nuts. They ask them to confess. They confess to make the the battery stop, and then they execute them because they confessed. The law allows military judges no discretion and requires them to sentence Palestinians convicted of murder to death, except in special circumstances, the rights group added. I don't know what those would be. The Palestinian Authority also strongly denounced the bill, with the Palestinian presidency saying that it amounts to a war crime against the Palestinian people, yes, and comes to within the broader context of escalating Israeli policies and measures across the occupied Palestinian territories, including Gaza Strip, West Bank, and East Jerusalem. It's just yet another war crime. I mean, like, and remember that they had said, Israel had said that starting March 1st, they were going to revoke the ceasefire and continue operations as prior, and that they were no longer going to honor or adhere to any ceasefire. And this is, again, yet another further escalation. So fuck Israel for all that. Here's Mondo Weiss's take. Again, Israel's Knesset has passed the law, death by hanging, mandatory sentencing, no pardon, 90 days to carry it out. The bill was devised by Itamar Ben-Gvir, who wore noose-shaped lapel pins in the run-up to the vote. Ben-Gvir was convicted in 2007 of racist incitement against Arabs and support for the Catch Group, a designated terrorist organization by both Israel and the United States. He wrote the law. He designated himself a terrorist and now is getting a law to carry out his terrorism legally. Nobody stops it. More than 100 Palestinian detainees have already died in Israeli custody since October 2023. I'd say that it's a lot more than 100. Dozens are still disappeared. Over 9,300 sit in Israeli detention right now, including 350 children. Hundreds could face execution under this law. Anyone who threw a rock at a tank would face execution under this law. Israel abolished the death penalty for ordinary crimes in 1954. Today, they voted to bring it back exclusively for Palestinians. Fuck Israel. Now, I wanted to bring the perspective of someone who started this genocide in Gaza, managed to get out. And I think his perspective is really important to bring. Abu Bakr Abed, journalist, soccer fanatic. The bill has been approved. Israeli prisons will turn into guillotines for Palestinians. Hundreds will be executed in the next few weeks. 9,300 hostages now in Israeli custody. Dark day for humanity. Unforgettably harsh memory in the Palestinian cause history. I'm so sorry, Abu Bakr, that I couldn't do more. And I'm sure that there's many of us feel the same way. Here's another nightmarish scenario. Ex-Mossad chief boasts of booby trapping and manipulating equipment in all the countries that you can imagine. I can imagine every country. All Israel-connected contracts should be canceled now. How long is this? Just a minute 22. Let's listen to this one. And action.
Oh. Any equipment, treated equipment we have in these countries? You don't. I do.
You mean booby trapped equipment?
Not only booby trapped.
And spying.
Manipulated equipment. All right?
In which countries are you talking about?
All the countries that you can imagine.
And not Gaza?
Not Gaza.
Nothing in Gaza at all.
Did you see that? If we had it, we knew something about them coming. Something, right? Or they
did know
everything. Just everything. You can't imagine the quantity. When I have invented that method, that was in 2002 to 2004.
The pager method.
the manipulated equipment method. Okay? We have already used it. Manipulated equipment in Second Lebanon War. Some of the elements were speaking to us.
How did you use it?
Want a glass of water?
We can get some brandy.
He can tell you. He can tell you, but he doesn't.
I know it's an early morning in London. I mean, I don't think that is the case. But how did we do it? I tell you.
Spooky. Literally spooky. I mean, like, why is this guy even out there and speaking like that? A direct confession that we booby-trapped stuff. I mean, first of all, we already knew that because of the pager attack. And he basically is admitting to the pager attack there again. But we got more. Israel continues to murder journalists. And the U.S. press continues to cover it up. But worse, they then tried to paint this journalist as a member of Hezbollah and literally put him in a Hezbollah outfit that he's never worn. Disgusting. All right. So Israel's explanation for killing 3 journalists in Lebanon doesn't add up. What a shock. From who, what, why. All right. Faced with criticism from Lebanon's leaders and advocacy groups following its targeted killing of 3 journalists this weekend, which they don't give a shit about, Israel's military on Sunday offered a few more details about the alleged association of reporter Ali Shoaib with the terrorist organization Hezbollah. And I even challenged the framing there of, because Hezbollah is a lot more than a terrorist organization, but that's a whole other story. Shoaib was officially recruited as a member of Hezbollah's military wing in 2020. Again, this is all made up. This is what the IDF claims, all right, that his role in the intelligence unit was to firm intelligence information and transfer it to the Radwan force under the guise of a journalist. He literally has no evidence to back this up. They're just making this up and claiming this. He added, because he claimed it by exposing the locations of IDF troops to Hezbollah, that he had posed a tangible threat to the Israeli forces occupying southern Lebanon, which again is absolute nonsense. However, even if the allegations were true, and they're not, the IDF, like I said, has offered no evidence so far to back up its claims. That doesn't explain why Israel chose to murder Shoaib, who worked for Hezbollah-affiliated news outlet Al-Manar TV, when he was traveling with 2 other journalists. They knew it, and then they put the snuff film on the internet. Reporter Fatima Fatouni and her brother, cameraman Mohammed Fatouni, who covered the war for the news channel Al Mayadeen and have not been accused of wrongdoing, not died, were also murdered in the airstrike. Listen to this namby-pamby language. In other words, the IDF wants people to believe that the only way it could take out Shoaib, who claims was a known member of Hezbollah for 6 years and affiliated with the terrorist organization for more than a decade, in a town bordering a war zone that Israel controls, the only solution was to kill 2 other journalists in the process. They've known about this guy for 6 years, allegedly? Yeah, That doesn't seem credible, which is why it's hardly surprising that the condemnation of the attack was swift. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun called the strike a blatant crime that violates all the norms and treaties under which journalists enjoy international protection in wars. And the country's information minister, Paul Marcos, said it amounted to a war crime. Yes? And what are you going to do about it? Oh, nothing, because Israel blew up all the bridges for the Litani River, so they can't get to them. In addition, what the IDF accuses Shoaib of doing, i.e. exposing the locations of troops and filming intelligence information, is often known as reporting. Pointing out that Lebanon has been an increasingly deadly zone for journalists, how kind of you, CPJ said it's investigating the attack, which follows a familiar scheme. CPJ, not a big fan of theirs either. They disappeared under Assange for a long time. We've seen a disturbing pattern in this war and in the decades prior of Israel accusing journalists of being active combatants and terrorists without providing credible evidence. Journalists are not legitimate targets regardless of the outlet they work for. Journalism is not a crime. It just came across that scrolling ticker at the bottom. It's something that I absolutely believe wholeheartedly. Unfortunately, that hasn't been true in many war zones, especially those involving Israel. More than 200 journalists. It's now more than 300. Journalists and media workers, most of them Palestinians, have been killed in Israel and the territories it's occupied since it invaded Gaza following the October 7, 2023 Hamas uprising. This means that more journalists have died there than in the rest of the world combined, and that covering Israel's military campaign is currently the most dangerous assignment for any reporter. And that the Palestinian journalists are some of the most courageous fucking people on this planet. I bless them. Fuck Israel. Next.
Racially segregated in Israel by the...
Wait, hold on. This just shows you how wonderful the Israeli people are. They are, they have bomb shelters from when they're hit. Well, apparently, they're excluding non-Jews from the bomb shelters because they're Jewish supremacists. So, let's hear about this.
Already de facto racially segregated in Israel by the racist Israeli settlers who prevent Asian and black migrant workers and Palestinians from using them during a missile strike. But this racist Israeli woman is advocating to make that segregation official on Israeli television.
גם אני היום בגילי, אכנס למקלט שיש שם מסתננים. ברור. זה פשוט לא יקרה. אז אנחנו צריכים להבין שיש פה אחריות, ואנחנו יודעים שזה מתרחש
להפריד, להם מיגוניות בנפרד, ולכם בנפרד.
Ironically, if you know anything about Israeli society, you would know that a racially segregated bomb shelter with only Israeli Jews in it is not a safe space. But that consideration doesn't stop this woman from advocating to bar non-white migrant workers who are already subject to terrible working conditions in Israel from the only safe place to be during an Iranian retaliatory missile strike. But if you know the history of Israel, this won't surprise you because white supremacist ideology and Jewish supremacist ideology have been central to Zionism from the very beginning. In Israel's short 80-year history, the government has subjected non-white Jews to forced sterilization, medical experimentation, ghettoization, and even the clandestine kidnapping and rehoming of their infants to white Jewish households. Israel's founding fathers were secular European Jews who believed themselves to be racially and religiously superior to the native Palestinian people and therefore more deserving of Palestinian land. Like 80% of the inhabitants of the Gaza Strip, my friend Mohammed was born there instead of on his ancestral homeland in what is now called Israel because Zionist terrorists felt entitled to his grandparents' land. And now Israel has renewed its campaign of extermination through starvation on the Gaza Strip by cutting food and other basic imports into the Strip by 80% for the last 3 weeks, which has plunged 1.6 million people into extreme hunger and put another 100,000 at imminent risk of starving to death. Your contributions at this button you know where empower Mohammed to purchase food for his family, including his younger siblings, and diapers and baby formula for his newborn baby. Thank you. Free Palestine, and let's get this family to safety. Bomb shelter.
Fuck Israel. So, isn't that nice? Don't they know how to treat people really well? Who supports anything like this, and why would you? It makes no sense to me. All right. Fuck Israel again, one more time. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. The ways to do that are Cash App, $ Indie News Network, co-fi.com/Indie News Network. All right, we've got paypal.me/Indie News Network and patreon.com/Indie News Network. We got IndieNewsNow.com is our website where you can check out news. You can watch us live. You can also leave a tip over there. And then you've got the Substacks at INNnewsletter.com and IndieMediaToday.com, where we're live right now. Hello to everyone watching over at IndieMediaToday.com. I saw Talking Wombat out there. I see Catherine Wallenstein just joined. I see Patrick McCarthy out there. Just want to shout out some of the people out there. Thank you really so much for watching over there and supporting the show over there. It really means a lot to me. Okay. So that was part one of our Fuck Israel part, because remember that everybody that is basically being sanctioned right now in the world is also being sanctioned and persecuted because of their stance against Israel's genocide, because they are speaking out against their country supporting Israel's genocide. And I'm going to get to three of them right now. The first of them, this is heartbreaking. Mohammed Safa, okay, his title was he's a diplomat, and he was the main representative at the United Nations on behalf of the Palestinian people. He said the other day, after much reflection, and after it became clear to me that some UN seniors are serving a powerful lobby and not the United Nations, I've decided to suspend all of my duties as the PVA main representative at the UN and from all UN committees and groups of which I'm a member. I cannot in good conscience be a part of or witness to what is happening at a time when the UN is preparing for possible nuclear weapon use. It has been an honor cooperating with the UN for nearly 12 years under different Secretaries General and Human Rights Council presidents, including PVA delegation. May God bless this world. And there is his resignation letter. Heartbreaking. All right. He said, earlier this year, senior officials and influential diplomats, supported by global and social media algorithms, deployed a misinformation campaign claiming an Iranian nuclear threat and sowed pro-war sentiments to encourage a war with Iran, but throughout the region, further their own agenda. This lobby was used to deceive you into believing that Iran posed an imminent threat to world peace. This was a lie and is the same tactic used to commit genocide in Gaza. Okay, and the same tactic is now being used to ethnic cleansing and the occupation of Lebanon. The UN cannot make this mistake again until the reform process outlined by the Secretary General is meaningfully implemented. I regret that I must suspend all my duties. That's a ridiculous, insane shame that the UN themselves can't protect him. Won't protect him. This is more infuriation. This guy literally has nobody protecting him. This is an independent journalist by the name of Hüseyin Dogru. We talked about him several times on this show. He ran an outlet called Red Stream or Red. It was shut down a year ago due to sanctions by the German government. He's a German citizen. He had gotten support from Turkey at one point. They then claimed that this was a Turkish operation and that they sanctioned him, and he was allowed to live on €600 a month. And that isn't nearly enough. He's got twin babies and a 7-year-old. Well, he put out a humanitarian emergency call the other day. As of yesterday, German authorities seized the bank accounts of my wife. She is not sanctioned and has not committed a crime. As of now, we have only €104 left, with 2 newborn babies and 1 7-year-old child. He's begging for help, for anyone that will help him. He says the authorities' reasons were that we are married and have 3 children together, guilt by association. We set up car insurance for our shared family car after mine was canceled. And because of that, I could theoretically, feasibly control her accounts, and therefore they've now seized her funds. The reason the EU sanctioned me was, again, for my pro-Palestine journalism and my work exposing Europe's complicity in the genocide, all of it masked as Russia-related sanctions. Again, accused of, through AFA media, being supporting the actions of Russia. Nonsense. This is punishment, just the same way they sanctioned Jacques Ba, the Swiss colonel. We talked about him in the past. What does the decision mean in reality? My children are now in a humanitarian emergency situation. My wife has been placed in a de facto sanctioned position despite not being sanctioned herself. Now they both can't receive money. They can't pay rent. They can't buy food. They're now facing homelessness because as of now, they're literally not allowed to pay rent. Okay, this is an article that I grabbed, and this is originally from Ralph Schmeller at Berliner Zeitung, and this basically lays out the whole story of what happened and all of the now no one can provide for our children. We have 104 euros available for our 3 children and the 2 of us. Now no one can provide for them, not even the wife. He literally wants the German government and the EU literally wants these people to starve and die. They have no answer for what to do. They won't let them travel. They won't let them leave the country. Even if they could, he wouldn't leave anyway. Okay. The administrative seizure of the accounts of Mr. Dogru's wife represents an unprecedented escalation of repression against his family. It's important to remember that he is sanctioned, but now his family is also increasingly suffering the consequences. Again, that's the point of the sanctions. The repression violates the family's human dignity and is unacceptable in a state governed by the rule of law. What should happen is that some government somewhere should offer these people asylum and take them into their embassy and then transport them out of the country to somewhere that they can live. That's insane. So frustrating. So read this article. I'm going to link it afterwards. Then we also have this British doctor, very courageous lady by the name of Dr. Rameh Adwani. She has been to prison 5 times, and she just got out again on remand. However, the judge denied this. They wanted to send her on to prison on remand. Judge denied it and released her on bail. She's still going to have a hearing, right? And this is like them all celebrating after she got out. All right, and that's good. What happened to her? On March 26th, she was arrested for the 5th time for tweets. Majid Freeman is also going to trial in 25 days and is facing up to 14 years for tweeting online supporting Palestinians during the genocide. This really where we're at? Yeah.
So if you don't let me in, I'm going to come in.
Are you the Met Police?
Yes.
Not again.
Okay.
It's you again. You're always with them.
You're under arrest for breaching of bail conditions between the 16th of January and the 25th of March, okay?
So this was her getting arrested, basically for tweets. Here we was, again, arrested, 5th time for words. 7 officers cuffed, a van and a car, an overnight hotel stay for the officers, and then driven to London to arrest her for words and posts. All right, so she has a fundraiser because she's got to fight this defense. It's now been raised up to £200,000. She's raised over 100,000. All right, but let me just read kind of what happened to her from her own perspective. It's been over 2 years of battling against the pro-Israel lobby in Britain. I've done everything in my power to resist them, and it's cost me my job, my medical license, my entire life savings, my home, and safety. Specifically, I have been suspended for 15 months from the medical register, smeared in every paper, arrested 5 times in just over 2 months, placed on a form of house arrest, banned from attending protests or events in London. Okay, having just been arrested for the 4th time, that was last time, for perfectly legal Twitter posts, she's raising money to take action against this targeted harassment from the lobby, the police, and the state, and to get herself back on her feet. This fundraiser is to tackle the wider personal and legal crisis. Your support would help her defense, fund her defense against this state-sponsored harassment, and help her survive to keep fighting. Okay, so on March 25th, I'll be using the fundraiser to pay for my high court appeal against my medical license suspension. On the 27th, when she was arrested, again, she was arrested under the Public Order Act and the Terrorism Act of 2000, Section 12, for exercising her right to lawful free speech. But they don't have free speech there. She said, I'm going to sue the criminal Zionists and build a medical school in Gaza. She intends to follow through with any remaining funds from this campaign. All right. A doctor. Okay. Speaking out against what Israel's doing. I can't move the photos. Right. Try to scroll through them. It's not working. Anyway. Remember that all of this, Mohammed Safa, Hüseyin Dogru, and now Dr. Rameh, Aladwan, this is all because criticism of Israel murdering Palestinians. Israel should not be allowed to murder Palestinians, and they absolutely should not be able to murder Palestinians without being criticized for it, and then to arrest the people who are criticizing them. We are literally an upside-down world, people. I don't even know what else to say. Support independent media. Fuck Israel. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Ways to do that are up on that board. Cash App, $ Indie News Network. Go-fee.com/Indie News Network. PayPal.me/Indie News Network. And Patreon.com/Indie News Network. Over at IndieNewsNow.com, you can keep the media free. And then over at Substack at INNnewsletter.com or at IndieMediaToday.com. You can choose either. All right. Next, I've got something really quick about Miss Rachel. We have been talking about Miss Rachel for a while now. How she is one of the few people that with real celebrity status and standing out in the world with normies who has been advocating fiercely on behalf of the Palestinians who will not shut up about it, and on behalf specifically of Palestinian children. It's phenomenal. So it hasn't stopped there. She also has been talking with a lot of these migrant children that are housed in Dilley Detention Center. She asked them to send her artwork, and she's featured some of that on her Instagram. Follow her on Instagram if you haven't already. But Miss Rachel is now working to shut down the Dilley facility, the ICE facility, which is privately owned, but the largest one for families. So this is Complex Magazine. So now it's made it into quote-unquote mainstream media. Miss Rachel says she's working to shut down a Texas ICE facility detaining families after a 5-year-old's case brought it to her attention. Reports say the children there face poor conditions and weeks-long stays. No, months-long stays. It's political to believe that children are worthy of love and care. And that's her wearing a dress that features the artwork of some of the Palestinian children. Just amazing. She says, I am political. It's political to believe that children are worthy of love and care, and that every child is equal, and that our care shouldn't stop at what we look like, our family, our religion, at a border. A absolutely remarkable woman. And again, she is pushing to have ICE's facilities shut down. All right. Tired peasant at horror girl. All right. Everyone should be pushing to shut down all detention centers. This one went a little viral. 1.3 million views, 134,000 likes. And it should have gone even more viral. You think about, that's almost a 10% ratio of likes to views. Most tweets have a much lower ratio of likes to views, especially viral ones. All right. And this guy made a short video explaining the whole story. So let's do this and how the right wing's melting down.
Miss Rachel. Children's YouTube star Miss Rachel is getting political yet again, and this time she is campaigning against ICE and their detention policies after speaking virtually with children.
Oh no, Miss Rachel was talking to these children in these detention centers, hearing their firsthand experiences, and she's raising awareness about it.
That are being held at the Dilley, Texas facility. And Rachel said, quote, "I am political. It's political to believe that children are worthy of love and care and that every child is equal."
Future generations are going to study us. They're going to be like, oh, the political talking heads of these news groups. They were going after the children's YouTube star, Mrs. Rachel, for saying politically divisive comments like all children should be taken care of. Number one, these news reporters aren't even thinking for themselves. They're just bending over for daddy and saying whatever they're told. Act as if they have some moral high ground. You're living in the freaking upside down right now. The fact that a children's YouTube star, Mrs. Rachel, who only cares about educating children and spreading love, the fact that she has to be the face of spreading awareness to all the violence and horrors that are happening to children, the fact that that is divisive, like the fact that this dude's going home and he's like, I'm making the world better today by attacking Miss Rachel, which, by the way, I just have to say, this woman is like such a clear depiction of the divine feminine. Like when people talk about the divine feminine rising, like she is, remember when she had to take a break from social media because people were doing what they do right now, right? Attacking her. And then she came back and her entire platform is about the children. Let's save the children. Here's the evil things that are happening to children. Can we not just think of the children? She doesn't bring up your politics. She doesn't talk about what side is wrong, what side is right. She just is a voice for the children. The funny thing is, people like him, weak men that bend over backwards for a paycheck. To be honest, not much of a legacy. I don't think his great-grandchildren are going to be particularly proud that that was Grandpappy, okay? People like Miss Rachel, I guarantee you, if she was leading this country right now, we would be in a better place. If we had world leaders like Miss Rachel, the world would be completely different. And right now, on display, we see just how many weak men and women push their morals to the side out of this fear-based compliance, out of this need to collect a paycheck. Who fall in line because they can't stand for something. Miss Rachel is here standing on fucking business, dude. This woman would not trade all the money or power in the world to collapse her morals. And you know that about her because she freaking radiates with that love.
These influencers, these entertainers always barge into spaces where not only are they unwelcome, but where they don't belong.
Oh no, we're unwelcome for speaking on these horrors. Also calling us entertainers when you guys are just regurgitating what the fucking network is telling you to say. We know it's smoke and mirrors. It's a political charade. You wish you had the aura that this woman has. It's the most beautiful thing in the world because she's showing you what true leadership is in a world that is devoid of it right now in our leader. We need to talk about Miss Rachel.
Children's YouTube star.
Nailed it. Fuck Fox News on top of it. But yeah. So support Miss Rachel. Go follow her over on Instagram. Go give support to her campaign. She's actually trying to get a petition signed to get as many people on this shutting down of Dilley. If you go to her Instagram, you can find links to it. Miss Rachel 4 Littles is her Instagram handle. Let me show that to you quick. Real quick right here. Bam. All right, so this is what her page looks like. And she said, I've noticed people calling me a middle-aged woman as an insult. It isn't. It's not. In fact, it's a great thing. Okay, here. Let's work together to get Dilley to close and stop harming children. Please sign the letter. All right, and she has a petition to be signed. So go support her for that. She's just something else. Here's another video of hers. Now, we played this one a couple weeks ago, and the volume was very low on it. And then I put that out. It's better on the clip. But, yeah. All right. So that was our little thing about Miss Rachel and shutting down Dilley. So she's advocating, like you said, she's standing on business and advocating for the kids, and fuck your politics. And your politics, by the way, if you're fighting against her, you want to murder children. You want to lock up children. You want to punish children in order to punish their parents. All right. God, fuck these people. It's just... All right, how do I... Mute user forever. All right, thank you, Karen, over there on Rumble. I got it. Okay, we got, finally, some good news. That very rarely happens. Okay, the children she's defending, go start. Put something up. What's this? I don't know what this is yet. Hang on. Oh, these are the Gazan kids, that are playing. They're having a funeral. And they're celebrating for their doll who died. It's so heartbreaking. But they find joy. They find a way to play. Look at them all lift that baby up. Lift that doll up. Work together. I'm sure I'm going to get the DMCA hit for the music, but I don't care. Man. Okay. Lightning round. Okay, I said it's something happy. Not just kids playing, but somebody who the first person I ever interviewed on INN, I was actually before INN, but on How Do We Miss That, was a reporter by the name of Robbie Yeager. Many of you don't know who Robbie is. Robbie is from North Carolina. He was introduced to me by Misty Winston and his reporting on the Colonial Pipeline, as well as on Justice Democrats funding and the Sunrise Movement funding from Soros back in 2019, 2020, 2021. And he disappeared. All of a sudden, he was just out one day in 2023 after publishing a lot of Colonial Pipeline stuff. And it made me kind of sad, but hey, man, people got to do what they got to do, and we moved on. And once or twice, right after Biden resigned, he popped his head back up and tweeted. He was like, did I miss anything? And then he disappeared again. Well, the other day, it was last week, we saw a tweet pop up from Robbie Yeager for the first time in over a year. And wow, I was pretty surprised, and I was kind of holding out hope that maybe he was coming back and it wasn't just a fluke. Well, he announced the other day that today I am dumping all of the internal PIMSA documents, emails and reports regarding the historic Colonial Pipeline spill in 2020, which he covered extensively for anyone who wants to browse them. These 229 pages were obtained through FOIA. Enjoy. Funny thing is, for all the old school people, he put it up on LimeWire, which is great. You know, that's a peer-to-peer sharing network. Yes, Dingo, you're wondering how Robbie has been. I've always been wondering about Robbie and holding out hope that he'd come back. Once in a while, I'd send him an email, just checking in, brother. Hope you're doing well. To add to that I looked up Colonial Pipeline spill since 2021. That there was only news reported on one in this past January, about a year ago. And then last August, the company, Colonial Pipe, was sold to a bigger firm. All right. But I got more. All right. Robbie then decides that he wants to offer us some kind of an explanation for what happened. I've been gone a long time. I figured I'd give an explanation. It's simple. I needed to disengage from this atmosphere completely. I got into this to make a difference. Maybe that was naive because I'm not sure I did. I told him many times he did. I became disillusioned. My mental health suffered. That's not something that we're not used to. I started to question the purpose. Do people even care? Why do I? Working and researching for hours a day, every day, early mornings and late nights, just so the mainstream media guys can step over me and my collaborators and take the credit. From national to local, it was the same. So I disengaged from politics and social media completely. Took the time I needed. I'm behind the 8 ball now for sure. Got a lot of catching up to do, but now I'm back and I'm pissed. But I'm motivated. Sorry for leaving you guys. I'll try to make it up to you. I promise. And I told them that some of us have never forgotten and have been keeping the fires burning. Chat, like Dingo, still asks about you. Your work on Colonial Pipeline and exposing Sunrise billionaire donors definitely made a difference and changed minds. And you can see the 2 of his other biggest fans alongside me, Nico and Misty, both welcoming him back as well, which is freaking awesome. So that's Robbie. And Robbie decided to do a little digging. And his nickname before was Robbie Receipts, and it seems he's going to continue that moniker. There was this big No Kings thing, but ahead of the No Kings rally, there was some kind of a progressive podcasters thing that they put on. However, Progressive Victory Action, he's finding the dark money. All right, Progressive Victory Action, which is the PAC's 501c4, took $565,000 from Future Forward USA. Who's that? Well, they were a top dark money donor backer for Biden-Harris in the last 2 election cycles. Part of their pledge is to overturn Citizens United. So this organization that is using dark money now wants to overturn Citizens United. This was the Choose Your Fighters rally with all these neolib grifters, quote unquote progressives, absolute garbage commentators. Nobody watched this thing. All right. But the point is that they actually have dark money funding them that duplicitously is also somehow advocating to end Citizens United. Weird. Just a reminder to everyone that Robbie Yeager is a 2022 Indie Media Award honoree. All right, he was one of the members of the first class when Misty and I first put down our list of names who would be worthy and deserving of an honor like this. Robbie Yeager, for his reporting, was absolutely up there. And again, I can't say how stoked I am that this guy is back. I adore him. He was the first interview I had ever done of any journalist. I was one of the last interviews he did before he went on his hiatus. And we talked about Justice Democrats, and we talked about Colonial Pipeline. And I was so proud of that interview, really. And I just adore that dude. So he has messaged me and told me that he's thinking about writing a book based upon what happened from Colonial Pipe and his journalism. And I'm like, dude, whatever I need to do to help, you just let me know and I'll be there. And I'll definitely be buying a copy. All right. So that's Robbie Yeager. Next, in the lightning round, Steven Semler. Okay. So this guy chases money also. His publication is Polygraph. You should definitely subscribe to that if you're not already. He notes that in a closed-door briefing with members of Congress, Pentagon officials estimated that the war had cost $11.3 billion in the first week. That figure has since become ubiquitous, as it's the closest the administration has come to saying how much it's spending on the Iran war. Now, and then, of course, mainstream media outlets are regurgitating it over and over again as their compulsive need to recite figures from government officials clashes with officials not providing any. He said it's $8 billion too low, at least. It should be at least $19.3 billion. And that's how the maths. $15 billion in weaponry. Over $1 billion in mobilization costs. And over $2 billion in destroyed assets. Look at that. So read that article. I'll put a link to that. I brought another video. I've been seeing more and more of this guy's videos pop up. He's been talking about, this time he's talking about the technology behind the White House app. And I don't know if you heard, but this week the White House actually came out with an official app, which is insane. But the story behind it is even worse. Watch this. I got to refresh. Come on.
White House just did today, you need to watch this. On March 26th, the White House dropped this cryptic video on Twitter, and it turned out that when you played it in reverse, it said, "Exciting announcement tomorrow." Listen. Then on March 27th, they published this loading screen and everybody started speculating. People were freaking out. They were like, are they finally going to release this info on aliens? And then the next day rolls around and it turns out that the White House announced that they were launching a mobile app and the ad was crazy. Watch this. Stick with me because this gets crazy.
There's been a lot of launches lately. Relax. This one's an app. Track the latest news, live streams, and everything White House, including the kind everyone's talking about.
Soggy Oreo said, curated propaganda at your fingertips, boomers in heaven. Sneeko said, drop the PDF files app next. But that's not the full story. When people started downloading the app, they quickly realized that they made a mistake. The permissions on the app allow the White House to see the user's precise location, to modify and delete the contents of shared storage, to view Wi-Fi connections, use fingerprint and other biometric hardware, and more. This guy was like, look, if you have downloaded and installed the White House app and don't know by now, delete it and factory reset your phone and tablet immediately and change your credentials as well. But in general, I mean, this opens the box for the most Orwellian future that I could ever imagine. A declassified report came out in 2022 that outlines how the U.S. government gets around the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That law requires warrants for certain types of surveillance involving American citizens. But they get around that, this report revealed, by purchasing what's called commercially available information, where the government just buys your data from a third party. But this app might open up Pandora's box for direct spying on citizens. You know, the thing that the AI company Anthropic was just speaking out against. They said they didn't want to participate in domestic mass surveillance, and then they got put on a list labeling them a supply chain risk for not bending the knee on this issue. But what people are really freaking out about is whether or not this app could be forced to be used, or even just highly encouraged. I mean, for instance, what if this were used to distribute benefits in the middle of a looming economic crisis? And that leads to some form of a central bank digital currency where they have full financial surveillance. But I don't know, maybe I've completely lost my mind here. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to stay up to date with what's happening here and much more. If you did.
Crazy. No, I did not download the White House app, so I'm good. But yes, they literally put spyware and who knows what inside that app to, you know, as far as biometric information, that just mean that could be Face ID to unlock your phone, you know, and to log into the app. But that's also creepy. They have your biometric information. They got all kinds of stuff. All right. Finally, I got one more thing. This is an article that it's very long by Radley Balko, who I've heard of, but I don't know them like very well. But this is a really long article, highly sourced, and we talked about this story a while back. Documenting Homeland Security's lies about ICE and Border Patrol abuses, the illegal raid on Chongli Scott Thao. Now, if you remember, they brought this guy out in Minnesota, like in his underwear, with a blanket on in the freezing cold. Why? There was some kind of suspicion of child something, and they were wrong. I mean, the whole thing, this is just a complete botching of this story. And so he wrote this up in You Can't Hide Your Lying ICE. And like I said, this is long. It's almost not quite as long as the Whitney Webb article, but it's long. Okay. Here you go. Under Trump, Hmong and the people in the U.S. who are not citizens now face the threat of deportation to a country they've never known and whose government continues to persecute them as long as collective punishment for other Hmong cooperating with the CIA decades ago. Many were born in those refugee camps in Thailand because their parents were fleeing persecution. Human rights groups warn that the Hmong in Laos remain at risk of genocide due to exactly that, dehumanization, polarization, and persecution. But let's just send them back anyway, right, Trump? I mean, they don't care. It's a good thing we don't do that sort of thing here in America, right? Definitely read this article. It's insane what happened to this man and how he's been treated, even after knowing that he was mistakenly identified. All right. GoFundMe's and then we're out of here. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Ways to do that: Cash App, $ Indie News Network, ko-fi.com/Indie News Network, paypal.me/Indie News Network, and patreon.com/Indie News Network. At IndieNewsNow.com, go there, so bookmark that, and make it your homepage so that every time you open your browser, you're seeing the current independent news. And you can also go to INNnewsletter.com and IndieMediaToday.com, and we can, and then you can subscribe on Substack over there because we do a lot of stuff over there as well. Okay, finally, we've got the GoFundMe's. Okay, Shanda Master. Shanda Master continues to fight. She's right now in hospice care, and I don't know how much longer we're even gonna. I hope for much longer, but at the same time, I don't know because she's kind of not lucid and suffering, and I don't want that to happen to my friend either. She fought a valiant battle with cancer, and it continued to ravage her via her salt. A lot of times cancer eats sugars in the body. With Shanda, it attacked her salt. And in the end, it got to her brain. It got to her eye. It got to a lot of different body parts. And she agreed to go into hospice care and not seek any further treatments. But we still need to help her cover expenses and her loved ones. If there's anything anyone can do, we really appreciate it. The GoFundMe is here. Let me drop that in all the chats for everyone. But yeah, I mean, I was told it's a matter of days, and that, you know, we were hoping that we don't know when it's going to be, but we think we've gotten our final message, sadly, and we love her. And she thanked everyone for everything that they've done for her. And again, just a reminder, Shanda Master is an Indie Media Award honoree from the class of 2023. And we're going to miss her. And again, she's still here with us. She's still with us, but we don't know for how much longer. And just sending her all the love that we can and positive vibes. Okay. Next, we have also a very tough situation. Cowboy Kitty is in the chat, and he sent me a screen cap of his notes. He actually got a chance to talk last weekend on the phone with Natalia Vlechkova, who is his sister-in-law. She's been in ICE detention for 9 months, locked up. She was detained after a routine traffic stop. That she has asylum here, and it's really weird, but they want to deport her to Ukraine. She is appealing that ruling. They have her here in the meantime, but he got to speak with her, and he took some notes down, and none of those notes were very good. I offered to Anthony to help organize those into an article or into something that he could kind of explain to people what's happening. The Sent said that she has those notes also. Yeah, I don't know what's happening there. Go start. Shanda's 53rd birthday is May 24th. So we're hoping, but so yeah, Natalia not good. She's underfed. All the same conditions that we're hearing about ICE detention is exactly what we heard from her as well. You know, poor conditions, cold, not getting enough clean and nutritious food, overcrowding, bad treatment abuse by the guards, everything that you can imagine. All right. Can she marry an American and get out? Sadly, no, unfortunately. ICE does not care about that. ICE has been locking up the partners of green card holders of people who married American citizens and accusing them of just marrying to stay in the country. So Natalia certainly needs help with expenses and her legal fight and anything anyone can do. You can see she's raised about $2,200 there. I'll drop this in the chats. Again, anything anyone can do. I don't know if Cowboy Kitty is still around here. Love to Cowboy Kitty. Yeah, really appreciate that. Why is that doing that? Stop scrolling, damn it. Trying to grab a thing to put up. Yeah, it's just heartbreaking that these people around us are struggling like this. And yeah, bad news everywhere, sadly, Kurt. I hate to say. That's really nice. Thank you. Really appreciate you doing that. Also, don't forget, we have Justice for Aspen. Aspen Martin, we've been talking about her literally for almost a year now. Aspen was riding in the wrong car on the way back from a music festival. The festival was in Florida. They were riding through Georgia. They got pulled over by state troopers who then searched the vehicle and found massive quantities of drugs and accused everyone who was in the vehicle of trafficking, including Aspen. Aspen did not even know the drugs were in the car. She never used them. The driver and holder of the drugs told the cop that she didn't know. Of course, the cop didn't believe her. She spent more than 2 weeks in county lockup. She lost a ton of weight. It was a nightmare experience for her, and she's now facing decades in prison, and she needs money to help her fund a defense. She needs money to help her fund experts and witnesses and just to live while she's going through this ordeal and unable to support herself. So anything you can do, you can go to linktr.ee/justice and the number 4 Aspen, and you can get all the links. I did an interview with her and her mom, Halo Benson. They were Assange activists while Julian was locked up. There's a link to Aspen's artwork, which you can buy, or the GoFundMe. All right. There is the article that Dissent in Bloom wrote about Aspen's case and the fundraiser live stream that we did back in October that on INN that a bunch of people, including Dissent in Bloom, participated in. Jesse Jett played music for over 2 hours. It was great. So support Aspen and Halo in their effort to try to get her defended. Really, really appreciate anything you can do there. It's just a nightmare. Halo had a birthday last week, so again, happy belated birthday to Halo. We love you. Okay. Finally, Indie News Now. I talked about the website multiple times. This is what Indie News Now looks like as a website. Very simple 3-column site. All right. This is our friend George Hüseyin and Israel-Palestine News and Decensored News Indie Media Award honoree. Antiwar.com and Corbett Report, another Indie Media Award honoree. The Dre Dossier, I like what she's been putting out. Go check her out. A Skeptic has been including a lot of the Indie News Now segments in their daily report that they put out. So check out all these different incredible writers and video podcasters and everything that you can find all at IndieNewsNow.com. Totally ad-free. I don't put any trackers on there, and I link you directly to the publication so you can support them there and read it directly there. There's also a merch link here, so you can pick up some merch at our merch store. I'm wearing an INN t-shirt right now. This t-shirt at the top, I'm literally wearing as I'm talking to you, the black one. All right. And you can get stickers, hoodies, t-shirts, tank tops just in time for summer. Also at this site is, like I said, the watch live link. So anytime INN is live, whenever you go to the site, you can always pop into the watch live section. And if we're live, you will actually see the stream running live right here. And there it is. Hey, look at that. All right. So thank you, everyone. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. Those are the ways to do it. Those are the people that have already done it. I love you all. Thank you so much for doing that and for hanging out with me tonight. And that's everything I had on my lineup. I think. Let me double check. What's this? Oh yeah, that's just live from the Black site. That's Jesse's album. Speaking of Jesse, we are planning on doing a. We were supposed to do a show last Thursday night. I ended up sick as a dog on Thursday, and Jesse got called back into work. So we're going to do it this Thursday night instead for American Tradition. I've asked Jesse to read a Dr. Seuss book at my son's request. He wants Gertrude McFuzz, the story of Gertrude McFuzz. And we're also going to do a TRL live, Total Request Live episode. So check that out on Thursday night. Tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern on all the INN channels will be Reef and Colin for INN News. Thursday night will be 10 p.m. Eastern. Friday, Angel in the afternoon. That's at 7 p.m. Eastern. Every day on Twitter, we simulcast AM Wake Up. So check that out. Today on AM Wake Up was an all-star studded show with 7 C's, The Last American Vagabond, and Steve. For like the first 2 hours, it was absolute fire. Totally go back and check that. And you can also go to Steve's Substack, amwakeupshow.substack.com. You can subscribe over there. And I've been administering that for him now for like 9 months or so. Okay, everyone. Again, thank you. I love you all. Fuck Israel. Fuck ICE. Support Miss Rachel because she's awesome. Support independent media because we need it more than ever. I love you all, and I'll see you next week, fam. No! We just fucking lost the stream!
I think I liked it better being blind when I couldn't read between the lines. And when I couldn't see the cracks in the structure that lay bare before me the whole time. I think I liked it better back when I suspended disbelief and swallowed pride. I thought I knew the difference in the red from the blue, but they both bleed us so dry. They both bleed us so dry.
My favorite songs don't hit the same way. I get to the end of a 4-minute track and I'm only looking back thinking, what did they actually say? So
I guess this isn't such an awful place. Is that what you want me to say? You prove it's possible to sleep for days, and I still think you're right here awake. The cost of living isn't much to make, but God, it's so hard to say. And when they told you everything was safe, were you safe? Were you safe? They won't let you go, set you free, send you home. Where you know what you need is what you owed, and they won't let you go. Set you free, send you home.
I was close enough to smell the fire. Jesus took the wheel and then he kicked me off the ride. I was busy shouting at myself from in the crowd, about to throw down and drag myself outside. I had to give myself the business. When I show myself forgiveness, it goes right between the eyes. Was looking past my shoulder, never focused on the prize. I stalked myself through burning sand the better part of 40 nights. I found myself staring in the mirror, yelling, go into the light. Cause I was in the rear view, staring at the highway, horrified. I was in the road ahead, arms wide, ready to be mummified. Gonna be the fella yelling how he's sick of always betting on his life. I'll also be the guy that brought the dice. Half a dozen chambers and I keep an empty 5. Only needed one to break the ice. Only needed one to clear my mind. Only needed one to stop time.
Wait, please say you know what you need is what you owed, and they won't let you go. Set you free, send you home.
That brought the dice. In these days of global disaster, all the money disappears with the fame. I'll say what I want, then burn my masters. And I suggest you do the same.
Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down. Hear my words, but don't breathe the air. You and I needn't speak to share. I'm so sick of the waiting now. I feel sick, so I'm laying down.
Alright, I won't name names so he won't call legal. We'll call him Bo Jiden, and he killed Glass-Steagall. He's on the trail, off the rails, profits over people. But I won't call him a Nazi cause I haven't seen his eagle. But I have seen his equal, and he's seated in the White House. I've seen his equal, and she lost the fight twice now. I've seen the evil of a man who'll shake the hands of workers, knowing they've been slaving for a feeble wage and little purpose, all to keep afloat his bloated lifestyle. I'll keep us focused on our phones in the meanwhile. If I'm a broken record, this has been a time trial. But I will not go quietly into the future I'm supposed to hand to my child. I will not politely hold my tongue when I see voters in the web of suppression. So I'm about to burn the list of things we shouldn't mention. Alzheimer's causes bouts of both confusion and aggression. Sentences that fall apart in paper-thin patience. Well, I have not spent the past 4 years practicing critiques only to need them for the next administration. And part of me would love to vote for Trump to really stuff you Biden diatribe junkies who would tie us to a chair to watch him push out Bernie Sanders, say he needs to just accept the loss and have your little celebration. Well, I don't know about you, but I have two